Three, two, one. What's up, no fans? This is the post game chop up with Nate and Steve. We are waiting for Steve to get home, so I do want to go ahead and get started. Um, Woo! They held on, man. I tell you what. After last week's, don't want to say collapse, but after they gave up a ton of points in the second half to Miami to see it again happen. That it is a little bit of a concern, but Florida State holds off Boston College and they get the W 26-23. Jordan Travis again, standout game through the air. Defense played well when it had to. Again, continues to play pretty well. One win away from bowl eligibility. So, again, this is a post-game chop-up with Nate and Steve, hosted by the Voice of College Football. Make sure that you listen every Wednesday at 8 p.m. to the live call-in show. It's going to be pretty interesting this week, heading into the hated rivalry game with the Gators in order to get bowl eligible. But let's talk about Boston College. So I think right here is the tale of the story of the game. Some self-inflicted stuff, but Gabe says that I never want to complain about the officials, but WTF. Trash call after trash call. Happy they came out with a win. I agree. Just a ton of really frustrating calls where the refs were just interjecting themselves in the game way too much. Lots of highly questionable situational penalties that just kept Boston College alive. 12 penalties for, what was it, 120-something yards. Just, Florida State simply is not that good right now in order to overcome, the self-inflicted penalties they had on, back-to-back false starts or pass interferences or whatnot. They got to clean that up going into next week, but they're not good enough to overcome refs and overcome just some really stupid mistakes. But I put on my Twitter that I felt that's one of the worst officiated games that I've seen in a long time for Florida State. In the Florida State game, it was just really hard to watch, and it made the game very herky-jerky. What's up, Steve?
What's going on?
Got the W. A win's a win is a win.
A win is a win is a win.
So
one more and we go bold.
Yeah, one more. So I'm talking about right now, I'm jumping in right into the first comment of the refs, man, just how awful they were. I like this idea. Can the podcast be called FSU versus refs? I mean,
yeah, it was bad.
Too much interjection in the game, man.
Way too much. And I mean, some of them were just killer in terms of the flow of the game and the flow of our offense. The offensive pass interference. That's really where it started. The offensive pass interference against Jordan Wilson.
Yeah, awful.
And then it went to the defensive pass interference against Cooper when the receiver was literally grabbing him and pulling him in, and he's trying to go like kidding me. Like that's the one where Norvell just lost it, But even like Jamie Robinson is engaging into a tackle, then the quarterback starts to slide. What do you want him to do? How is that a penalty when he's already going low to try to tackle low? So it's not a helmet to helmet or targeting.
And he moved his head to the side.
And then and then the quarterback goes down to where he hits him in the head. Like, what? And then they later on, that looks just like when Denton did it. And they're like, well, that looks just like the other one. Yeah, and neither of them are penalties. They're already engaged on the tackle when the quarterback goes to slide. It's not a penalty. Yeah, you already got me worked up on a win.
So
it was terrible officiating.
Yeah, it was honestly one of the worst that I can remember in terms of, just got off of calls, and like you said, it took away the pace of the tone of the game, man. It's just like, do you have the stats pulled up?
No, I can pull them up real quick.
I think it was like a combined 18 penalties called. The 12 were on FSU, which is awful.
18
Especially
combined. Yep.
how many?
18 combined. You're
18 combined penalties.
13 on Florida State.
Oof.
13.
13
and
penalties.
I can count on 1, 2, 3, 5. At least 5 of them are complete garbage calls. You know, even like the illegal formation on Darius Washington. What?
Yes. He's like
that's how every offensive that's how every offensive tackle lineman lines up. Yes. Just like that. With his it's the right tackle, so his left foot is on the line and his right foot is off out. And is ready to go.
Yeah.
What? Like that's how they all line up.
You can call it every game play
tonight. Yeah,
you can call it every play.
Every single game. And they called it 2 plays in a row. Taking away a first down. Like, come on. Like, that's just ridiculous. That's just ridiculous.
So let's move on. Another game where Jordan Travis does a lot through the air, back-to-back weeks. I felt coming into the game that Florida State was going to have to run the ball really well. I thought they did, especially in the first half. I thought they ran really well. I was surprised they kind of went away from it, in the fourth quarter, especially taking away Travis's legs, and I felt they got a little pass happy. But your thoughts on Travis playing another really solid game through the air?
He's really starting to come around and starting to grow on me some, and some of it's starting to is on Norvell and Dillingham, like really learning what he can do and putting him in positions to really be comfortable. But that's not all of it, because you look at even the downfield passing and stuff like that, and even that is getting more on target, and making better decisions and stuff like that. There's still some dumb decisions like taking that sack on that first drive, taking us out of field goal range. Like you can't take that sack. You got to do something. You can't take that sack. But yeah, he's and I don't remember who it was. Somebody brought it up about how BC was his 13th game that he started. Like he's just now played a full season. If you include like a bowl game, he's just now included a full season. So, look at the war, stuff like that. How many quarterbacks did we see that struggle year one and dominate year two and after and stuff like that? So
I don't know if I'm going there yet, bro. I ain't going there yet.
No, I'm not saying he's Charlie Ward. I'm just making that comparison, like as far as like not that he's Charlie, but like you see that a lot. And one thing Jordan has that a lot of those other dynasty quarterbacks that Jordan doesn't have is they had 2 or 3 years in the same system learning before they played one snap at all. Whereas Jordan has been in this system for a season and a half, and it's only 13 starts. So, I don't think his ceiling is that high or anything like that. But, if you had asked me if he was a starting quarterback next year and we get a few good receivers and a little bit better offensive line, can we be 8 or 9 wins with Jordan with the right pieces around him? Sure. Absolutely. I don't think he's going to be one to hold us back that much. I know there are people who do, but I just don't think he is.
Yeah. Well, what was the stat line? I know he had 3 touchdowns, and that catch by McClain was beautiful.
So he was 20 of 34, 250 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 150 QB rating.
And how many on the ground?
He only had 26 on the ground, but they were really keen on him. So
let's talk a little bit about we talked a little bit about last week, and I think it even showed, especially in the first half, just how well the rhythm is of the offense. The play calling. I think Norvell and Dillingham definitely have had. They got it figured out a little bit in terms of what this offense can do really well, and I think they're putting the whole entire offense in good positions to make plays. In the first half, there were quite a few drops. So some plays that FSU could have, kept drives going and put up some more points. They were up 19 to, what was it, 6 at the half or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And they could have, it really could have been, over 24 points in that first half. But you look at, how they're using guys in the passing game and what they're doing to get Travis, and I agree. I think they've done a tremendous job, scheming this offense to be more efficient.
Yep. I think earlier in the season, people question, okay, what's the bigger weakness? Is it the receivers or the quarterback or the offensive line? And right now, I don't think it's a question. It's definitely the receivers. Like, they are holding the offense back more than anything, and they're playing better. They're playing better. Some of it's starting to get Douglas more involved, getting him out in space and stuff like that. But just in general, there's just too many drops and not enough tough catches made, and just not enough open receivers. Majority of the time we do have it's a open receivers. It's like a scheme. Like, we've seen them, on a play action or something like that, to where they're open. But you rarely see a receiver just running a route and getting open and allowing the quarterback to get in the ball. You just don't see that a lot. So, if we were able to get some guys in next year that were able to do that on a consistent basis, you see a vastly different offense.
So, they come out of the half and they go right down the field, and they, they had that connection with McClain in the end zone where he makes a really great play on the ball. I think a lot of us probably thought that, hey, the scheme might be over. But what do you think was the difference between those halves, offensively for FSU? Other than the penalties. That's hard.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, there's not a whole lot different. We were doing a lot of the same stuff, it's one thing we talked about it like 2 weeks ago, I think, and I've talked about it with Staples many times, is like BC did change some things to try to take some of those the short passes and stuff like that away, so instead of us getting into like 2nd and 5, 3rd and 3 type situations, they were taking those away. So now we're more on the 2nd and long, 3rd and long situations, which are more difficult, obviously, for us to get into. But, one of the things, like I was saying, me and Staples have talked about for the last 2 or 3 years, is we just don't have the personnel that once the defense adjusts to take away what we're doing, we don't have the personnel to be able to adjust and continue to dominate. Like, we were dominating them. We were just right down. The only time we didn't score was when the refs didn't allow us to score, and so once BC adjusted and they kind of took some of those things away, we just don't have answers. And a lot of that's just personnel. We just don't have personnel answers to be able to counteract. Everybody talks, they would talk about chess and stuff like that. Like, once our opponent adjusts and they're playing chess, like, we just don't have other moves to do. Like, we have one way we can go in that game plan, and once that's taken away, we just don't have the options. And that's where the lack of talent that Florida State has right now on offense really comes into play. Like, once those adjustments are made by the defense, we got nothing.
Yeah. Coming into the game, Boston College was giving up 6 yards a rush on first down. So I do kind of think they went away from the run. I agree with you that, Florida State does a good job of scheming their game plan. And once they get better players, it's an in-game battle. Adjustments are an in-game thing. So, I mean, there is a cap to what FSU can do offensively until they can continue to get better depth and better threats across each position. And that's just what it is. But what I would have liked to see a little bit more was running a little bit more, because. As I said, Boston College wasn't a great team against the run coming in. I think they were 70th in the country. Go ahead.
One thing I think hurt in that aspect was not having Love Taylor in there at guard,
Right.
and Johnson is hurt too. So we had
Yeah, let's go
Brady.
Mizzou.
We had Brady Scott in there, who we all have said many times is there's a huge step down from
Yep.
Gibbons, Dante Love Taylor, Baby and Johnson. Those three are almost interchangeable. Yeah, Gibbons probably a little bit better than Love Taylor and then Johnson, but all three are good. They can do a good job. We're fine. When you go down to the fourth and you get Brady Scott in there, there's a huge difference.
Drop off. Yep.
It's a huge drop off. And like as soon as I saw him playing, I'm like, yeah, we're not going to run as good as we want to or as we think. And then sometime there in the third to last drive, I think it was, another offensive lineman went down. Was it Washington went down?
Yeah, but he came right back in.
He came right back in. Okay.
Yeah.
But some of that stuff, like, he's like, yeah, I'd like to be able to run anymore. But without that, with Scott in there, like, how much can we've proven game in, game out, every time he's in there, we're not near as good of a running team, of a team, period. So, that it hurts. And that's where, like, Norvell said last year, he's like, he wants 8 solid linemen. Well, I think we have 6 right now.
Right.
We just don't have that 7th, person
to be able to put in there. Need the emergence of Lloyd Willis and Rador. They're gonna hopefully can keep a guy like Schrader healthy, who's showed some promise early on. So, but that's on another day. So let's talk a little bit about defense. I put a tweet out there, and I really think this, and I think that right now, the way that 11 and 4 are playing, I think they're the best defensive end tandem right now in college football.
Yeah, you'd be hard pressed to make a.
You think it's hyperbole?
I don't think it's hyperbole. I mean,
maybe Georgia, but
But their strength isn't even on the outside; it's on the inside with that monster. I mean, I might even take it a step further with how our whole defensive line is playing, because our interior is playing very well as well. Cooper's like really stepped up the last 3 or 4 weeks. Lovett's still continuing to play well, and Ray and Jackson are playing. Since Briggs went out,
really well.
They've stepped up as well too. So it's like the whole defensive line. Like, are there many defensive lines playing better than ours is right now? Maybe Clemson, maybe Georgia. Outside of that, who are you going to point to that's playing better than ours? And that's really just spurring how well our defense overall is playing too.
Yeah, Michigan has a really good front four.
Michigan too. Good job. Yes, yeah, that's true.
Yep.
But top 5 defensive line right now, I don't. It's not a very hard argument to make. Like, we're playing very well. If we had a better middle linebacker, a better stud linebacker, like, it'd be very hard for people to do anything on this defense. Deloach is playing at a very high level, which is very good to see, man. It's amazing the turnaround. That kid went from started the game 1 last year, then played a little bit game 2, and then barely played the rest of the year. And everybody thought he was gone. Everybody's like, okay, he's going to transfer. He's in the doghouse, whatever it was, going to transfer. And, we even talked to his dad, and his dad made some allusions to that, but he stuck around and showed a lot of heart and a lot of determination and growth to be able to now say, like, the way he's playing right now, he should absolutely be, if not first team, second team, all ACC linebacker. He is playing very well right now. And, we just need 2 other linebackers in there that can play at that level. And wow.
Well, so, I think that, Kerry Thomas and Jermaine Johnson did whatever they wanted to today.
Oh, yeah.
And they were held so much that it's almost laughable.
It's
almost laughable. But
on some big BC plays too.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that they were, I don't know if dominance is strong enough for how they played today.
Yeah.
I thought it was a smart call on that 4th down where, they ran right where Jermaine was coming from, they took advantage of the aggressiveness of that defense and get after him, which is smart. It's what coaches should do. But I think that when you look at those two guys, I think Ray's coming on really well, especially in the run game, which bodes well. You go into next week with a need for one more win to get into a bowl, which is crazy. That we're actually talking about that after being 0-4.
0-4.
But yeah, I think that you have a front four that is right now, firmly within the top 5 in the country. You have defensive end. Your tandem is probably top 2 or 3 nationally. Just playing extremely well, and it's balanced itself out with the way that Keir Thomas has been playing. So, I think that I think the defense got in their own way a little bit today. I think that some of the penalties were questionable in pass interference, but I get the penalty like you talked about earlier with Jamie Robinson, but I wouldn't have called targeting on that. So overall, defense has done what it's had to do, and it all ties together. Football is a team sport, and they're fighting hard through when these other teams are figuring out the offense, and when the offense is having problems adjusting to the adjustments, the defense is still fighting and keeping this team in the game.
Yep. I want to point out one thing too with the defense, and you're mentioning the Robinson penalty. We talked about it a few, maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago, how Robinson was coming along and how he was really the quarterback of that secondary, and how he's constantly making sure everybody's in right positions and the communication is there and stuff like that. You really, if you really were paying attention to it, which I was, the amount of mental lapses, and miscommunications in the secondary as soon as he went out, once he was kicked out, was astronomical compared to whenever he was in there.
15 all of a sudden, struggles a lot.
Yeah.
Even wrong run fits toward in the goal line situations. Just I know Brownlee got beat, on that touchdown to Flowers, but 15's got to see that quicker and get over there and help.
Yeah, and it's not even that's correct
a little bit.
Yeah, it's not even so much just that there's an obvious difference between Robinson and McClellan in terms of playing ability, but it's just the communication. You just notice there was just a huge difference in the communication and in the secondary, and things just weren't, we still were able to stop, that the quarterback and have him under 50% even after Robinson went out. But you saw those bigger plays that we haven't really seen a whole lot the last, several weeks start to play into the game some more. And they had some, and some of that's just Zay Flowers is a stud. He is. Kid's freaking baller, to really hold him to only 2 big plays, and I think he only had 3 catches. That's great. So
yeah. Jones and Brownlee should be spelling for corners next year. No Way Through should be starting again next year. I think it's going to be interesting. I don't care what you say. No one can tell me any different. I expect Travis Hunter to be a corner starter day one. And I would put Cooper there. But I would also, I think that's why they're going after another JUCO and DeCarlos Nicholson. They see that. But I think the emergence of Cooper, he's going to be hard to fight off. I think that's your top 2 corners next year.
Yeah,
I have a hard problem not seeing Hunter coming in and not being that force on day one.
Yeah. Cooper had another great game. There's, I think, maybe 1 catch on him that I can recall. And then they had the pass interference, which was awful, was not a pass interference. But other than that, everything was on either the linebackers or, Brownlee, which there wasn't a whole lot in the passing game. I mean, they only had 130 yards. But, I fully expect it to be Cooper and I'm really high on Cooper right now. Cooper and Hunter, and then in the slot you have Knowles, and I think Brownlee will move into there and compete with Knowles for that starting nickel spot. You know, and then you're going to have Robinson and Dent at safety. That's
let's put into the good juju of recruiting. You know, what if they land Earl Little, who I think fits that role better than any of them?
Yeah, I mean,
that's a Sam McCall.
That changes the game too. You know, if you're, getting Earl Little and having Cooper and Hunter, and then Little in the slot, and then you still have Knowles and Brownlee and Jones in backup roles. I mean,
depth.
Wow. And then you still got Green on the team. You still got Sidney Williams on the team backing up Dent and Robinson at safety. Maybe Travis J finally, the light bulb finally goes off, and he starts showing up to meetings on time, and things change.
Green's been banged up, and I think they are interested in moving him back to corner.
I think they did move him back to corner on the last two depth charts. He was there,
which I like that move. And Sidney Williams has been hurt, and I think that Sidney Williams is going to continue to play, starter and a major backup role, because he's done really well since he came in last year. You got to like what he's giving you.
He's actually absolutely going to have a role on this team. I don't think he's as good as his top end is as good as Dent and Robinson. So if those two continue to play, he's steady. If those two continue to play like Dent has the last 2 weeks and Robinson has all year, those two will absolutely be the starters next year. But Williams will be able to come in and provide like probably some of the best depth in the nation at safety.
Yep. So this is the post-game chop-up with Nate and Steve, hosted by the Voice of College Football. Make sure that you listen to the live calling show every Wednesday at 8 o'clock. Florida State holds on tight for a 26-23 win up in Chestnut Hill, beating Boston College. I think they're now, 9-1 in the last 10 or something like that versus Boston College. Which,
10? Yeah, 9-1 in the last 10. But
9-1 in the last 10.
Which that one loss was pretty bad, but let's not go there.
Yeah, we won't go there. So FSU sits one win away from bowl eligibility. So you and I talked about it after they beat Carolina. That beating Carolina makes it, looking at the schedule, we sat here and went through the rest of the schedule about, hey, how does this happen? We thought that there was a slim chance, but now we're looking at, you look at next week, I think it's higher than 50-50 now.
Yeah. I imagine, some of it would depend on what happens in the Florida-Missouri game today. Florida wins that game, I imagine Vegas will probably have us as underdogs. If
I'm fine with that.
Which I would rather it be that. That kind of brings in what Mike's saying, how this team plays together. They really fight so hard, and they take stuff. They do take offense to stuff, and playing that underdog role really well. So when they're underdogs like that, they're going to come out and fight. So I'd be fine with that. But I think what we said was we have to go 2-2 against, after that in North Carolina win. I think we said we had to go 2-2 against Miami, NC State, Florida, and Clemson. If we beat Florida next week, that will be 2-2 against those and bowl eligible at 6-6. That's what we said we had to do, and to get bowl eligible, that's exactly what's going to have to happen.
And we'll talk a little bit about it at the end, but I think that even getting to this point, win or lose, they lose next week, getting to the point they've gotten to, I think FSU fans, you don't want to go 5-7. 5-7 sucks. You don't want to lose to Jacksonville State, but it's a much different feeling than what we were all feeling after 0-4. There's a lot of positive direction. Offensively, I think they found some stuff. The defense has gotten a lot better. I do think that, I've been very anti-Fuller. I think that he's probably earned himself another year.
There shouldn't be no thinking about that. That should just be, I know.
Yeah. I think
just let it go, Nate. Let it go.
I think he's probably earned another year because they've played better, but they've also, just as we talked about on offense, them finding kind of the who's and where to put them. They cut way back on the substitutions. They found out what's working defensively and where guys are playing in their best fits. And that's also helped too tremendously. Just killing the constant rotations and letting these guys get into the flow of the game has helped. So I think there's a lot to be happy about. Going up and you and I both hated where this game was on the schedule at the start of the year. But we didn't think that Boston College was necessarily going to be a great team, but in between your two biggest rivals, it's a tough spot.
On the road in November.
Yeah, up in November, a chance of cold weather, blah, blah. It's just how it is. Knowing that this is a young team. But they came out and they fought and they won. Again, they pushed through adversity. These refs put them in tough spots, but they still got the W. And one thing I want to talk about is just the fire we saw in Norvell on the sidelines, going after the refs, going after Coach Marv down in the goal line. What do you think about that? He wants it, man.
He wants it, and that it's filtered down like to the entire team. Like, some of that you can see, like these players, and there's been things we've seen throughout the last 2 years where it points to it, but you can really tell in how he is on the sideline and how the players play. They love him, and they're taking on kind of that personality. And this is the kind of team he wants, a team that is very hard-nosed, very physical, and just gets after it. Now, once we start adding the talent to that, and if we keep that same mentality, you have a recipe for some magical teams, but yeah, his demeanor and his fight and the motivation that he has, like, it's absolutely filtered down to this team, and it's very easy to tell, how this team has taken on that, and this is Mike Norvell's team.
Oh, for sure. I like him getting after the coaches, getting after players. I mean, we haven't really seen that since Jimbo, the heyday of Jimbo, and these guys respond to it. They don't shut down. They don't go pout. It's very clear that they're responding to it in a positive way. But
it's just holding people accountable.
Yep.
And we haven't seen that since 2013, really.
Right. So let's, as we wrap this up, I gotta start getting ready for a wedding. So let's talk a little bit about next week. Going to Gainesville, going up against, I'm trying to think of something really smarmy to say, but we'll go up against the Gators. Mullen's dug into Florida State a little bit since he's been there, but this is a different team, man. This team's in trouble. They got to win today in order to be, today or next week to get into a bowl. I kind of hope Missouri wins, so next week's the battle for bowl eligibility. But three things. What three things do you think heading into next week? That got to happen for FSU to get that W.
For one, we need to get either Love Taylor or Johnson back and Brady Scott out. If that happens, we can run on Florida and we can have some success in the passing game.
The defense is horrible.
Yeah, it is horrible. It's playing really bad. It's getting worse. It's just not good. They don't play together at all. So one thing about that is like big plays. So whenever we have those opportunities, which we've said it many times, when those opportunities for big plays present themselves, which they will against Florida, we have to take advantage, especially early, because they're a very, very, very fragile team right now mentally. So if you can jump on them early, like it could get ugly, you know. And it wouldn't be because we have that much more talent or we're that much better team than Florida. It's just that that momentum, you know, it's a magical thing. You know, we saw it with the last couple of weeks, you know, last 2 weeks with people coming back against us, you know. So if we can jump on them early, you know, kind of like what we did the last 2 weeks against Miami and against, you know, BC this week, jump on them early, and Florida might they could just fold, you know, especially if they don't have, you know, anything to fight for. You know, say they lose to Missouri and they don't have bowl eligibility to fight for. I mean, you know, which I mean, there's some things, you know, so yeah, we got to get more healthy on the offensive line, get those big plays, and that defensive line just continue to play like they're playing. And they just don't have the quarterbacks to be able to hurt us if that happens.
Yeah, this isn't remotely close to that Florida team that played against Alabama. And yeah, I think the writing's on the wall for what's about to happen with Mullen. I think this is a program that's in some transition, and you know, I really think they get. You know, I harp on it every week. It's going to come down to how well FSU can run the ball. You know, I think that Florida is just soft. It's a soft Florida defense, and I think Florida State can get after them on the ground, which is going to create a lot of stuff for Travis in the air. You know, I think they're going to have to, you know, cut down on the penalties, and then, no, I just feel overall more confident about Florida than I did about Miami. I just think that it's a team going in two different directions. But we'll see, man. It's a rivalry game. Things always happen.
Things happen.
You know, Marvin, for all of his warts, everything off the field and everything as a recruiter, he is a good X's and O's coach. So, you know, I don't think it's going to be an easy game, but I do think it's, again, that Florida State's going to be able to, you know, have a physical advantage, and they haven't had that in a while. But again, so as we wrap this up, you know, it got a little bit dicey. You know, Boston College should send a thank you letter to the refs for keeping them in the game. But, you know, Florida State pushes through, man. They're 5-6 on the season. One win away from making that bowl, which would be so beneficial for a young team to get those extra practices. So, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, what you just said right there is pretty much everything. If we can get a win next week and get those, I'm not sure it'll end up being 15 extra practices, just because I just don't know. It'll be
shorter sucks.
Huh? Short. Oh, it'll be a crappier bowl, so it'll be earlier in the season. So I'm not sure if it'll be a complete extra 15 extra practices, but I mean, I guess maybe we can still sneak them in. Not sneak them in, but get them in, lump them together. But that would be huge, you know, especially for like these younger guys. Just get that a little bit of extra practice in, and you know, just I mean,
the mentality of the program too.
Yeah, it will be. I mean,
just the confidence level.
Then we'll get like you know, an 8-4 or 7-6 or 7-5 type group of 5 team, more than likely is what we'll play. We get a win there, and so we start off 0-4. We finish 7-6, winning, going 7-2 in the last 9 games, winning against Florida, winning against Miami.
Should have beat Clemson.
Should have beat Clemson, you know, and winning a bowl game. The momentum and the feel of this program would be completely changed, you know, if that was to happen. So yeah, next week is huge. I mean, no matter what, even if we lose to Florida, like how we finish the season, like really has changed like the trajectory of what most people are looking at and what we were thinking at 0-4. So, you know, but a win next week would be amazing, like for all of that.
So I agree, but thanks everyone for stopping in and listening and participating as always. Again, this is a post-game chop-up with Nate and Steve, hosted by the Voice of College Football. Make sure that y'all listen live every Wednesday to the call-in show, 8 p.m. Love to see it. 26-23, FSU gets another win on the road. So as always, it's go Noles.
Go Noles.